Alright boys, so I've been looking at doing a video on this topic for quite a while because it's something that I feel very strongly about. I've been seeing a ton of articles by all sources of media about this specific thing, and I just want to talk about it. And I saw something yesterday that made me really annoyed, and it's about someone that I actually quite like, and it annoys me because he has these opinions which I flat out completely disagree with, and that's fine. It's football, you disagree with things, right? But I think it's important to kind of speak out about this, and it kind of intertwines perfectly with a topic of a video I was already doing anyway. So let's get into the topic of the video, and most importantly, what I saw yesterday by Mark Goldbridge. Let's go. So this is a conversation here, right? And this is something that I feel very strongly about, and I will always push this forward here. And this is the perfect time to, I feel like. So basically, we've all seen in the last couple of years that cash is king, right? Football and money goes hand in hand, and that it's been basically took over by states, nations, oligarchs, the entire shebang, because they know there's tons of money in the sport, right? And we've seen the cup finals of the Supercopa de España overseas, I believe in Saudi Arabia. The Turkish Super Cup also being played in Saudi Arabia, but then it was actually delayed and actually suspended because of some political disputes. Surprise, I never expected there to be political disputes in Saudi Arabia. That for one stuns me. And of course, there's always since the dawn of time been a conversation about putting Premier League games over in America, and this is right now for America, but don't get it twisted, this could be for anywhere in the world, because guess what? Money. Now, of course, what they found out with all these preseason tours, that they can make a ton of money by playing more Premier League games and more games over in America. That's why they're doing all these events and all these preseason matches over in America, because they've got huge stadiums, massive stadiums with a ton of fans that will buy the tickets and lap it up within seconds, buy all the kits, buy all the gear. They make so much money, and they can charge extraordinary amounts of money as well for a ticket, because it's like a rare thing for someone to experience. There's so much money in it. Now, one thing to keep in mind here, this is nothing new. This has been proposed countless times before, even as early as 2008. Game 39 is one scandal, I would dare say a scandal, which was put forward and proposed of a additional match week in the Premier League around January time, which is in a neutral venue. Basically, a match over in America or in the Gulf states or in Australia. Basically, a match week where you can basically send out all the teams to play a match week in the Premier League competitively in these nations. Now, the issue is, right, some of you may be like, okay, but what's the big deal? Like, there's so many games in the Premier League season. What would be the end of the world if there's one extra game played overseas? Because there's worldwide fans, right? Well, here's my issue. Something called a slippery slope, where at first, it's one game, and then it's the Cup final, and then it's the Charity Shield, and then it is the Champions League final, and then it's another game, because they make even more money. It's a slippery slope, and we all know that it is. And this is something that I've got a very strong opinion to, and this is when we get into Mark Goldbridge. Goldbridge has his say on Premier League games being played outside the UK. Now, this has kind of come up because of an article about 2 or 3 days ago, an article coming out by The Athletic and many other publishers about the mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, calls for Premier League games to be played in the US. Now here's my 2 cents on this, okay? Just let me give my thoughts on this. What is the mayor of London doing getting involved in this? I don't know why. What are you doing in this conversation? Who asked? Now, Khan is a Liverpool fan, and he used the example of US-based clubs having playing games in the UK, so why can't we do that in the US? Well, there's such thing called they're American. Of course they would do that. What? Liverpool are currently on tour in America. They have big fans in America. Why can't those fans see a competitive game? And this likely led to this statement done by Mark Goldbridge. Give it a play.
Would you be totally opposed to any Premier League competitive games leaving the UK, or are you open to it in some way, shape or form? Because you can't stand in the way of progress. There is huge amounts of money that come into the Premier League because of a global audience. And if you don't do it, you better be sure your neighbour John's going to do it. And what I mean by that, La Liga, the Italian league, who lag behind the Premier League for revenue and appeal, will step into those markets in an attempt to try and make them more appealing. And this is where I'm going to do the mic drop, and you should have stayed till the end. I, as a football fan, I'm not opposed to this if you get rid of the 3 p.m. blackout, because if you're going to give America or another country some of our Premier League games, they already get to watch 3 o'clock games as it is. So you're taking more away from the English game to the international audience that already gets to watch games that we can't. And I think that is what I would say as a fan. If you want a conversation about taking games to America, then you better clear this 3 p.m. blackout and let us be able to legitimately watch every single game like they can in America already, because they're already getting a better viewing experience, and now you're going to give them games. Mic drop.
All right, there you go. So that's the view of Mark Goldbridge and his thoughts on the situation. Now, the thing is, like, look, I don't want to really, really pick out a Mark here, because all in all, I don't have any issue with him. But his opinion on this is something which I think has to be stated. Because, look, and I mean this with the most greatest of respects, this is very typical of a fan that doesn't go to games week in, week out. It is just the truth. If you go to any match-going fan and you say to them about this situation of games being played overseas, 99% of fans are going to say, shut up, what are you on about? And this is where my problem lies. Football, for me, is something that I decided a long time ago. And we all see football in different ways. But fundamentally, football is meant to service its local community and represent them and put their area on the map. The entire point of football and football clubs is created, purely exists to represent the local community. Like, that's the way I see it. Like, Burnley Football Club is meant to represent the community of Burnley, the town of Burnley, the people of Burnley, and to put Burnley on the map in the same way that Carlisle United does, or the same way that Manchester puts Man United on the map. And if a football club no longer services its own community, then it's no longer a football club, but a brand. That's the way that I personally see it. And hear me out, right? People always get very emotional on a topic like this because they always see it as one side against another, about the match-going fans against the non-match-going fans that may live overseas, and it's always a debate of which fan is better than the other. When in reality, it doesn't matter. It is irrelevant in this situation, because I know many fans, that's Burnley fans from Ireland or from America, and are just as connected and just as passionate about the club than what I am, who's born from Burnley and raised from Burnley. So look, it's not a case of who's a bigger fan. That's just a scapegoat of people trying to find arguments for no reason. Many fans that aren't even from the area can also understand and argue against this happening. Because look, Mark Goldbridge, United fan, or if you, whoever you support, let's say you are also a United fan. Let's just use him as a sample because it's Mark here, right? If you are a Manchester United fan and you want to experience the culture of the club, you go to Old Trafford. You experience the history. You sit in the same seats as what many fans have done before you for countless years. You soak up the atmosphere outside the stadium. You walk the same steps. You have the same food. It doesn't really matter. You see the same players on the pitch wearing the legendary red shirts that has been on the same patch of land for countless years. You experience Man United Football Club by going to Old Trafford and watching them live. And if you take Manchester United out of Manchester, then for me, they're no longer Manchester United. They're just United. They're Red United. They're a brand. They're a franchise. It's Americanized completely. Now, you may say, look, you're being a bit pedantic here. It's only one game. One game in America ain't going to hurt. And I get that. I get why people feel this way. But for me, it's simply a slippery slope. Because it won't just be one game. You think, let's have a real think about this. You think all of the investors, all the shareholders, all the TV dealers, right? They're going to have a game in America, in, I don't even know where, in California, in Florida, in wherever they play the games, right? And they're going to make countless amount of money because games, even for preseason, sells out within hours. The stadiums which can pack up 70, 80,000 people are sold within hours. You think they're going to have Premier League games that will sell within a few hours? They'll make a ton of money because they can have those tickets at like $80 or $100 a pop because they can. And they think they're going to make a ton of money and then stop doing it? No! They're going to have it once because that's what they could get away with maybe, and then they're going to make it to more games in the FA Cup or the Community Shield or the Champions League, or to have 2 match weeks. Look, football has already had issues with playing too many games in a season where we're having so many managers come out about the well-being of players. So you think us having a week and a half when we just shove players overseas and then, make them make all that travel, all that effort halfway through a season or at the end of a season or whatever to go play like in a different continent altogether and then to come back? Is that thinking of the well-being of the players or thinking about your pockets? Obviously the pockets. Football clubs should be tribal. Football clubs should represent the community, and if you no longer have your games in your area for your home games, then you're no longer representing your community, servicing them, and then you're no longer acting like a football club, in my opinion. Now, one thing I will give Mark credit for here is the second half when he spoke about the 3 p.m. blackout. Now, in my own opinion, I do, of course, live overseas. I do, of course, live in Poland now. I used to live in Burnley till I was 20. But, look, I get it. 3 p.m. blackout for at least Premier League games, I don't think should really exist anymore. Because one thing that is completely true is that the English fan or any person in England that wants to watch football is being scammed out of their lives. You got BT, TNT Sport, with Sky, with Amazon's Prime sometimes. Like, there's so many games being thrown on these platforms, but when I say so many games, I mean like a handful of games spread across. And they charge about £20-30 a month for each subscription as well. I live over here in Poland. I pay £8 a month for Viaplay, and I get every single Premier League game with some EFL games and Bundesliga games. I can watch every game, no issue, and I'm sure it is for any place in the world that isn't England. English fans are being completely screwed, and I do believe, at least for the Premier League, the 3 p.m. blackout should be deleted. I think it really should, because I just feel like the price they are charging for the everyday fan, and to not even give them all the games, I think is personally, they're ludicrous. And I get why it's there in the first place. It's to protect the actual match-going fans, to make sure fans still go to the games, because if the game's on TV, it may make fans not want to even go to games, because it's like, well, I could just stay at home. I just don't think that's an issue for the Premier League. For like Championship, League One, League Two clubs, absolutely. I don't think it's warranted really to have every single 3 p.m. game on TV for like Cheltenham Town versus Port Vale. I don't think it's needed, and I think that can actually damage the amount of people going to the actual games, because they may just not want to bother going. But of course, if they don't go, they don't see the game really until highlights later on that day. So I think for the Premier League, I think 3 p.m. blackout should be eradicated. I just don't think it's necessary anymore, because I personally, this is my own view, I don't think it will make too much of an impact, if any, to the actual communities or to the actual football club in terms of like match day experience or attendances. I don't think it will. Like, that's just my view on it anyway. I saw this article here by The Independent, and I think it really kind of words my view of how football is going quite well. So I'll start up here. There's also something bigger here, quite literally. There is already a world where there is an expanded Champions League, an expanded World Cup, an expanded European Championships, and an expanded Club World Cup. It cuts to a deeper philosophical question of what all this is for. The intention of all this is capitalistic growth, as if the prospect is endless. In a situation where we're already talking about an independence regulator and a social roller game more than ever, is this really the way football competitions should be behaving? What about just having a sustainable game? What actually happens if the biggest clubs get to play more games around the planet? It just means they accumulate more of the sport's available resources, sucking up more interest and wealth that might go elsewhere. The global body argues that this is all to spread the wealth of the game beyond Western Europe. But does this actually happen? It seems to just further reinforce the global power of European clubs, since they would inevitably receive more prize money. There's also more to it than that. If the Premier League or Spanish clubs went to the US, is it actually good for American soccer? It just creates more emotional links to English sides rather than local MLS clubs. Some figures there already argue that Lionel Messi's arrival has really just meant more interest in the game's global dimension rather than the MLS. This happens around the world. It is actually galling to think that when one's country's broadcast company signs a contract with a foreign league, such as the Premier League, there is no actual stipulation that any of that money has to go back into the country's domestic game. That directly serves to cannibalize the sport. This isn't how football should work at all, but it is where football is going. More of the same all the time. I made a decision a long time ago of how I view football, and I could view football completely different to you, and that is fine. I think football clubs should stay true to their communities, and I believe if you have football clubs play overseas, it will become a slippery slope and it'll come into the franchising of football where the actual community doesn't matter anymore. Like, look, if there's an FA Cup final, which one day I guarantee there will be a day where we're having an FA Cup final or a Carling Cup final, a League Cup final overseas somewhere. I just feel like, because it's already happening in Spain, it's already happening in Turkey, it's going to happen to many more clubs as well, where they're desperate for money and they're just going to sell to the highest bidder, because money is king, and that means you can have more control, and that means you can have more money to compete at the highest level, because the Premier League is king and it's so hard to compete with us. And the Premier League may see it as a threat if Spain or France or Italy takes up these deals over in Saudi Arabia and America, and it means they make more money. They may see it as a threat, and they may have their hand forced to also join the ride and to go and have these games overseas. Many clubs at the top level don't want fans there to be a fan of the club. They want you to spend the money, shut up, and enjoy the show. And will you enjoy it? You tell me down below. Comment down below your thoughts, and I'll see you next time. See ya.